India, television channels, newspapers and magazines are very careful about not offending large sections or small communities, whichever may be the case, even when their editors uphold the right to mock God. Now, is that pusillanimity or is that actually wise restraint?
Well, see, how you exercise freedom is always context specific, right? In the sense that even the manner in which the French, say, go about satire is specific to the way in which French society has evolved, the kind of social cultural context, which is quite different from what it is in India. So, what may seem very strange to an Indian when they look at Charlie Hebdo is quite acceptable in French society. And I think similarly the way in which Indian publications approach this is conditioned by the kind of society we live in. Having said that, I think that the kind of laws that we have and the kind of politicians and political parties that we have also serves to exercise some kind of a, I would say, unwritten, there's an unwritten terror that is exercised by the manner in which laws operate. So it's quite easy for somebody to embroil you in a court case claiming that my feelings have been hurt because of an article you've carried or a drawing that you published. So I think editors, TV channels, newspapers, etc., over the last 4 or 5 decades have been conditioned to be cautious simply because the law doesn't back them when they exercise their freedom of expression. And I just want to make one point in terms of what Kamal Farooqi said. Of course, the right to free speech is not untrammeled in the sense that you cannot incite violence, but of causing offense to somebody, especially when that concept is so elastic. There's no telling what will offend me. Something may offend me but not offend you, and we may be part of the same religion. So I think that to extrapolate this conditionality it's the incitement of violence that we should oppose, not the fact that somebody may be offended or somebody may dislike what you publish.
Let me put that to the two people associated with religion on my panel today, and I'll start with you, Father. Do you accept the press has a right to offend?
No, certainly press has a right to offend. There is no problem about that. But then there are certain limits to everything. There is no such thing as absolute freedom. For instance, your right to swing your hand ends where my nose begins. You cannot have an absolute right to swing your hand wherever you want.
But just a moment, Then you're suggesting
these
I'm not
people
talking about
have
violent actions.
done.
Let's leave violent actions out. But are you saying that the press therefore cannot satirize Jesus because you're offended and therefore their right ends where your offense begins and therefore they can't go very far?
No, there is always a thin line between that. But certainly they have a right to offend. But I think, now particularly this paper had been so provocative. For instance, now the headlines were today in the mouth of one of the attackers. It says, still no attacks. We have until end of January for New Year wishes. Now you are actually inviting now.
Are you saying that they were provoking the attack on themselves?
Exactly. That's what actually is happening. In today's newspapers, you will be seeing it all. Two things I want to.
I want to clarify what you're saying because it's very important. Are you actually saying to me that Charlie Hebdo provoked the attack by that front page of their latest weekly?
No, but this is today's editorial. In fact, this is today's newspaper reporting. But he was doing it earlier also. That nothing has happened. What I'm trying to say, under no circumstances, by no imagination, any sane person would agree for what has been horrendous act has been done yesterday. No question of.
But then, what do you mean by saying that they were provoking it?
They know it. What is the limit? They know they are harming a particular community. They know that a particular community is offensive about all this. Still, they have been rather provoking it. So
Tell me something. You're taking two contradictory positions.
No,
you're
I'm
saying,
not.
Let me finish the question, then you answer. On the one hand, you're saying no one has the right to kill anyone, regardless of what offense is given. Regardless of what offense is given. On the other hand, you're saying Charlie Hebdo, with their latest cover, provoked the attack.
No, in fact, what I'm trying to tell you that as our French gentleman was saying, in fact, I have got all the right to demonstrate. I have all the right to take all the legal actions, and what Vardharajan is said absolutely right. Why Indian community is a little bit sacrament about the whole thing, because they know it that if they do anything wrong, there will be demonstration, they will be taken to the court, and there is some check and balances.
Let me bring in Victor Mallet, because I personally am confused by the position you're taking. It seems to me that you're saying two contradictory things at the same time. I'm going to put in and ask Victor Mallet. Victor Mallet, can one say, as Mr. Farooqi is, that no one has a right to violent response, no matter how bad and grave the offense, and yet at the same time say Charlie Hebdo is guilty of provoking the attack because of the cover they had last week when they were saying there's been no attack on us so far. Can you have both positions without contradicting yourself?
No, I think not. I think it is important that Charlie Hebdo or any other satirical magazine in France, in the French context, should be allowed to say whatever it wants, whether it's about Christianity or Islam or Hinduism or any other religion or indeed any other politician or businessman. I think it's very important to look, to go back to what the French ambassador was saying about the motivation of the attackers. Now, if their motivation was truly anger at the fact that Charlie Hebdo had satirized the Prophet Muhammad and Allah, then they would not have staged this attack, because what they have done is to massively publicize a previously obscure satirical magazine and all its cartoons among hundreds of millions of the world's inhabitants. We've now all looked at these cartoons, and in some cases we've laughed at them, which we would not have done had this attack not taken place. So clearly the attack was not about stopping the world from satirizing Muhammad or satirizing Allah, and therefore we must conclude that there was another motivation which has nothing to do with that. In other words, attacking Charlie Hebdo is simply an excuse, or rather the fact that they satirized religion, they satirized Allah, they satirized Islam, is merely an excuse for an attack. After all, let's go back to what happened in Pakistan, where extremists killed more than 140 school children. Was that because these children were satirizing Islam? Clearly not. The motivation is really important here. Now, I don't know what it is, but it's clearly not about reducing satire against Islam, because if it was, they would not have staged this attack.
The key issue here, François Richer, is this question of should there be some limitations or restrictions on freedom of expression, and therefore by corollary on your freedom to mock God and satirize religion. Now, many Western countries, and your country France is one of 17 such, actually has problems when people question the Holocaust. It's an explicit or an implicit crime to do so, not just in France, but in countries like Austria, Belgium, Germany, Hungary, Liechtenstein, the Netherlands, Poland, etc. Now, many publishers in the West will not touch a book if it questions the Holocaust. Why then can the same sensitivity not be shown to Muslim feelings about Allah and the Prophet? Is it not double standards to show that deep concern and put a restriction on your freedom of press as far as the Holocaust is concerned, but not put a restriction as far as the Prophet Muhammad and Allah are concerned?
There is a very big difference here. What is not possible is to deny a fact which is documented, historical truth that nobody can challenge. So this is a completely different debate. And in the case of Charlie Hebdo, I would like to challenge what Mr. Faruqi has said. They have not insulted or offended a particular community. The very job of Charlie Hebdo is to criticize in a satirical fashion all kinds of communities in France, whether they are politicians, industrialists, bankers, or religious people. It is a satirical magazine that nobody is obliged to look at. Nobody is obliged to buy it. You have to make a particular act to go to the shop and purchase the magazine. So it's not like going everywhere and offending everybody. It is an act of interest that you are doing when you purchase it. So it's a completely different thing, and everybody would be authorized to challenge Charlie Hebdo. Everybody is authorized to demonstrate against it. Everybody has the right to make his point. But what is not possible is to accept intimidation by one particular radical group, which is trying not only to take advantage against Charlie Hebdo, but to impose upon free societies a regime of terror. And this is the reality.
Let me, Sir Varadarajan, go back to that point I was making about the West's attitude to denial of the Holocaust compared to the attitude many countries in the West, many journalists in the West have about satirizing religion, not just Islam, any religion. Are there double standards there, as some say, that you restrict your freedom in terms of questioning the Holocaust, you don't restrict your freedom in terms of satirizing God, whether that God is Allah or Jesus?
Well, the strict analogy would be if there were if there were a different attitude towards satirizing Christianity or Judaism, which in legal terms you don't have. But I do want to address the question of Holocaust deniers. I frankly am not comfortable with the idea that a David Irving or a Robert Forisson or whatever these Holocaust denier crazy people whose books or tracts are very easily refuted. I'm not comfortable with that the best way to deal with them is to criminalize their publications or their speech. So I do feel that France, Germany, other countries have gone overboard. I think the British approach or the American approach is far more sensible, that you let these guys air their dirty linen, and any sensible person with any basic knowledge of history will know that what they say about the Holocaust is rubbish. So I think that I am not, as I said, not comfortable with that kind of approach. But as I said, the strict analogy would be if French law were to have a different attitude towards the satirizing of Judaism, say, or Christianity, which clearly it doesn't.
Let me put it like this, Father. Is there a difference between satirizing your own God and your own religion and satirizing someone else's God and someone else's religion? Do you have a right to satirize your own, maybe not a right to satirize your neighbors?
Absolutely. Well, I'm not quite sure about that, but I think what I want to make an observation is this, that I think the French society, they're talking so much about freedom. Everyone appreciates freedom, but freedom for what? Freedom is not to offend somebody, but the French society, I must say, just excuse me, I think they are taking it to another extreme, this freedom to another extreme. They are being fundamental, just as religions are, some of the religious people are fundamental about their religion. The French society, and particularly these editors, had been too fundamentalist about their own freedom. I mean, I think you need to, after all, this paper serves whom? Does it serve only certain individuals? It is meant for society. And if you are offending certain individuals or a good number of people in society, and you know very well, you are not completely oblivious to how people might react. So I condemn certainly this killing of people. Yes.
Clarify this to me. At what point does the exercise of freedom move from being legitimate and acceptable and become extremist and fundamentalist? When is your criticism valid that the French are becoming fundamentalist? When they attack Islam and God, or at some other point?
Well, I think particularly in this case, they know very well that the Muslims are very sensitive about the images of the Muhammad, peace be upon him. Then how can they just play around with that? They know that a satire on Jesus or on Mary is tolerable and is tolerated. So they know.
So aren't you therefore putting
they know very well.
Let me go to Victor Mallet before I go to the French ambassador on that one. What you're hearing from Father Dominic is a very interesting position. Because Muslims are sensitive and Christians are not.
I think it's a shocking position.
I beg your pardon, say that again?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, the point
I hear your question. It's a shocking position, because it suggests that we should give in to people who are threatening us with violence, which is clearly not acceptable.
No, it's not like that.
I mean, simply because somebody is more likely to be offended and therefore more likely to commit violence doesn't mean that a satirical magazine, which I think, as the ambassador was saying, does not have to be purchased by anybody, should be banned or should try and withhold its activities. And don't forget, there are lots of people out there who don't believe in any religion, in fact, who are militant atheists or militant agnostics. They're not generally going around killing people, and they have views which should be respected.
Can I interrupt and put this to you? I'm slightly shifting Father Dominic's answer to an exact example that perhaps applies to Britain, a country you know well. Britain often satirizes Jesus. The Imitation of Christ is a classic example. Mary Whitehouse in the old days used to complain vociferously about it. But only rarely, if at all, does the British press or the British theatre satirize Islam and Muhammad? Now, is that because many people instinctively realize, don't play with fire? Is it because they know the response from Muslims is going to be different to the response from Christians, and therefore, why provoke a hornet's nest?
That may be true, although I don't think it's entirely true. There was a very nice cartoon, I mean, it was satirizing Muslim extremists rather than satirizing Islam, in Private Eye, which is a British satirical magazine, the other day. And there was a sort of mullah talking to a couple of jihadis and saying, you're not going to like this lads, we're going to go back to the old Islamic values of education, tolerance, and art. You know, I can't remember the exact words, but the point was, you know, that was okay. That was satirizing the extremist branch of the religion rather than God himself,
okay,
or the Prophet himself. But I don't think Britain particularly holds back.
Let me bring in the French ambassador, because in a sense what you were hearing, Monsieur Richier, is the claim that the French take freedom of expression and the right to satire to an extreme or fundamentalist position. That you know it's going to provoke violence from Muslims, yet you do it, and therefore, in a sense, you're being unwise and you're being risky. You're sticking your head into the bear's mouth when you don't need to. How do you respond to Father Dominic?
To speak very frankly, I am quite shocked, because I would have expected from a godman like Father Dominic that he would first and to start condemn what have happened. The fact that somebody has allowed himself to kill human beings against even God's spells is the critical fight tonight. What we are talking about is a group of terrorists who have killed human beings because they were expressing their opinions. And the Muslim community in France, the clerics of the Muslim faith in France, condemned that attack sharply. And I don't understand how is it possible to say something what was said.
No, we certainly condemn. We have condemned. There is no unequivocally we are condemning any killing and any violent action.
Can I hear that condemnation from Kamal Faruqi?
Absolutely. I have been on television since yesterday, and I would differ with the...
But can I hear you say the condemnation?
Yes, must say strongest possible, and I am quoting it from religion itself. My religion is very clear. Under no circumstances, when I am saying under no circumstances, anybody has got a right to kill the innocent.
Have these people who've done it, claiming they were avenging the Prophet Muhammad, actually done the Prophet himself a disservice?
Absolutely. Prophet Muhammad would have never done it.
Right.
And the other question which you said, I must respond it from the religious point of view itself. My religion very clearly says in Quran that under no circumstances I am allowed to make fun of anybody else's religion, their gurus or their books or their places. Any Muslim, if he is doing it, he is not following the path.
Let me put this to you, Siddharth Varadarajan, because we're coming to the end of this discussion. Is the capacity to tolerate religious satire and ridicule linked in some way to a particular level of education and perhaps to a particular level of economic well-being? And is that why the West takes satire in its stride, whereas many poor third world countries respond very differently?
I think that may be too much of a generalization. I really haven't thought about the wider set of circumstances, but I do feel that this issue of satire and offense is in many ways the wrong end of the stick here, because what we're dealing with is an act of political violence, of terror, and the pretext could be anything. And the minute we make the issue of offense or somebody taking offense the focus point, I mean, this is a completely subjective thing. Causing violence is objective, it's measurable. Causing offense is a completely subjective phenomenon. And, so once we go down that path, I'm afraid there's no end to it, because somebody may take offense over cartoons, somebody may take offense over, something entirely different. So there's no end to it. So I think you cannot legislate or create rules or get overly worked up about the fact that a journalist is causing offense to somebody. I think we need not worry about this. The focus has to be on this political act of violence, this act of terrorism by these guys, which has, as Kamal Faruqi and the father and François Richer and everybody in the show says, has absolutely no justification.
Very quickly, Victor Mallet, because we lost you in between there. Do you believe that the context in which journalists satirize, ridicule and lampoon makes a big difference to the manner in which their satire and lampooning is received? Or is the context an irrelevant concern?
I think it clearly is relevant, because different countries have different sensitivities and different legislation. But I think, to the extent possible, it shouldn't be relevant. One of the things I admire about France, and I've worked in France twice in my life, is the sort of ruthlessly secular nature of the state. You know, when your kids go to primary school, they're not allowed to have religious symbols of any kind, including Christian ones. And obviously most people who have a religion in France tend to be Christian, Catholics. But you're not, you know, there's a very stern view that the state is secular, it's non-religious, it doesn't tolerate kind of religious protestations of any kind, pro or anti.
Okay.
And I think that's an admirable view to take, because once you start taking a line for or against any religion or anybody's religious sensitivities, there is in fact no end to it.
Very quickly, Francois Richer, are you concerned today by the fact that there have been a series of attacks on mosques, not just in Paris, but perhaps in several parts of France, that these are retaliatory attacks? And are you worried by that? Because this could be an indication of a deepening fissure or divide between France's Muslim minority and its Catholic majority?
Yes, of course it's a matter of concern. These are isolated acts by some rednecks. What is important, I think, luckily, to see the unity of the nation in defending the values of the Republic in the right way. In the same way I was condemning the violent attack against freedom of speech, I would like to praise the calm and the determination of my fellow citizens when demonstrating against this violence, when expressing their confidence in our institutions, and expressing support for freedom across the board, and in particular the freedom of the press. And I think the message of unity we are carrying, and all the message of support we receive from all over the world, is a clear-cut message that democracies will not bend over the terrorists.
That perhaps is the point at which, gentlemen, we should end this particular discussion. It's a sorry fact of reality that this discussion had to happen, but I'm very glad that in fact the majority opinion does believe that the press has the right to satirize, even if some people believe that right has to be exercised with restraint or at least with caution. Perhaps the audience will understand if today I end without saying goodbye, but actually say Je suis Charlie. Or maybe if I can speak on behalf of everyone, Nous sommes Charlie. Au revoir, bonne nuit.